Introduce yourself, Myron, or you want me to introduce you?
Myron Chamberlain, Prime Lending, and I've known Carson for about 11 years now.
How long have you been in lending for?
16 years.
16.
So that's all I know, and I love it. So yeah, we met 12 years ago.
Yeah, I met Myron. I was actually selling a property, and he was representing the buyer.
Yep.
And at that time, I think I was on my 10th lender, and Myron and I built a relationship over a couple of years.
Yep.
And I got in a hard point on an investing deal, and I gave Myron a shot, and he delivered. And ever since then, I've been pretty loyal to Myron.
Yep.
So I would say one of the differences between Myron and his team and other lenders are he understands the loan products and understands lending, as opposed to most lenders out there really spend a lot of time on the marketing side and building their business by marketing, as opposed to understanding the actual product. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for the introduction.
yeah. I'm Carson. This is our brokerage, Original Realty Co, and we really put a lot of emphasis on the building your investment portfolio and building your retirement through investing, as opposed to the trickle down approach that a lot of real estate brokerages do through the pyramid scheme. So so today we're going to talk about a few investments, and we haven't went into actual things that are on the market yet, so this will be hopefully interesting to you guys, and we'll have time for question and answers. You could just throw your hand up if you have questions as we go through, and we'll tell you. You'll get to kind of see how we look at deals, and
Yeah.
So, okay.
And it's we believe so strongly in this. I bought my first rental in 2013, and then back then it was an auction property. And since then, I've just seen the wealth. Real estate builds wealth, and it's so different than your income, which just pays the bills each month. But a lot of the wealth that people create is through real estate. And
So I think some of these deals are going to be like shorter term looks at the deal, and then the last one I know is going to be a longer, like 10-year outlook on the deal. So
yeah. And well, I love working with investors that are just getting into it. And so the way I focused on real estate is actually very different than what Carson has. So my portfolio consists of 40 properties. It's all long-term rentals. They're all single-family, multifamily, and townhome, both in Arizona and Oklahoma. And I just like the long-term aspect of it, where somebody moves in, they stay in the property, and it's predictable. And so that's what I've focused on is acquiring just long-term single-family properties, which is much different than what Carson's done. Although he's done that, his portfolio has consisted much more of single-family homes that he can create a business income from and uses them more.
yeah,
as a
so
business.
we've done a little bit from flipping. We've fixed and flipped over 300 houses, anywhere from little 12,000 square foot houses to multi-million-dollar houses on Camelback Mountain. So we've went through that, and I tend to agree with Myron of really liking seeing now that the timeline's further down in my career, the value of investing in a property and seeing it play out for 10 years. And a lot of those ones that we grew our rental portfolio to like 50 rentals. So it was cool to see over time the value of ones that we started with for $100,000 that when we exited were 500,000. So it's cool to see the value of just waiting too.
Yeah, for sure. John, did you want to jump into the first?
Yes, so let's go through.
So this class is a little different than the other ones. We, John said, why don't we look at maybe some deals that you're actively working on, so you can see where I perceive the value to be. And so our daughter is 17, and she's wanted to get into real estate. And so I did some looking and said, well, can a 17-year-old buy a property in Arizona? And they can't. There's no minimum age limit to be on title in Arizona. So this is one that I found for her, and I think it makes sense, and it kind of highlights maybe where some of the perceived value is in our market, because we're in a high interest rate environment right now. It's hard to buy a rental property traditionally. When you go to the MLS, buy one and put 25% down, it's not going to cash flow. It takes a lot of capital. And so I think there's some drawbacks that the market is giving us.
Yeah, you have to look through a lot of properties to find ones that even cash flow if you can.
Yeah, to find something.
So you have to look at it a little bit differently in this market. So
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And so this one is a property that's seller financed. Has anyone heard the term, or do people know what seller financed is? No. So it would be a seller who's selling a property, and they decide to act as the bank versus us bringing in a traditional mortgage to acquire the property. And the reason a seller would be open to providing the financing to us as the buyer is there's several reasons for it, but one of which is when they become the bank, they collect the mortgage payment over time.
So traditionally, could your daughter even get a loan since she's 17?
Be tough. Yeah, it'd be pretty tough for her to get a loan right now. But in this case, if the seller's willing to give her a loan, the seller she'll make payments to the seller each month. And so it's called seller finance. Typically it happens when the seller has a lot of equity in the home, or they own it free and clear. If they were to sell it, they would pay capital gains, whereas if they sell it on seller financed, it delays some of their tax burden. And so in this case, it's a manufactured home, and it's in Surprise, and the purchase price is $164,000. So it's a very traditional 1-bedroom, 1-bath manufactured home.
Is that what you would value it at right now?
No, it's worth 170, probably to 175. So there is actually a little bit of equity in there because you own the land with it. So you're not buying just the manufactured home, it's the lot itself. A lot of times when you buy seller financed, you're going to pay more than what the current market value is, because the seller wants to get a premium for giving you.
They either want higher interest or
higher interest,
shorter terms,
or more money, or more money, yeah,
or more money down,
or more money up front. So if a property is worth $200,000, frequently you'll see a seller say, "Well, I'll sell it to you for $210,000 or $220,000,"
yeah.
And you'd be happy to pay that premium because you know you're going to get it back in favorable terms with that seller. So in this case, the seller said, I guess let me first say how the deal came. So most of the properties I've purchased just come through the wholesale channel. There's dozens and dozens of wholesalers in Phoenix, and I just get signed up on their list. So every day I probably get 20 properties sent to me that are off market from wholesalers, and this one just happened to come through my email about 2 weeks ago. And it said seller financed 0% loan, which struck me as attractive. And so the seller doesn't want any interest on the loan, and they're going to give a 5-year term. So all of the payments that you make on that mortgage during the first 5 years go 100% to the principal. So the seller wants $1,000 a month payment, and so over 5 years you'll make 60 payments, which means you'll pay the loan down by $60,000.
And then what will she do in 5 years from now?
So in 5 years, it's pretty much your exit strategy. You'll have to sell within 5 years, or you'd have to refinance it out with the traditional bank. So if it balloons in 5 years, so the price was one.
Or you'll try to refinance with the seller too.
Correct. Yeah, you could ask the seller if they would be open to extending the term past the 5 years. So the price is $164,000, and they want a $14,000 buy-in fee. So what that means is that the $14,000 is what my daughter's down payment would be. And that covers the real estate commissions, the title company fees, the HOA fees. Any cost of purchasing the property comes from the buy-in fee, and the wholesaler also takes their profit from that for finding the deal. And so it's a $14,000 buy-in. The loan is $150,000 with the seller. 5 years at 0%. Payments are $1,000 a month. And John, do you have a slide up there with the? Yeah. So you can see here The HOA on the property is 188, taxes, insurance, and home warranty. So I encourage her to put a home warranty on there just so it mitigates any expenses during 5 years. So her total payment's like $1,300. It comes with the tenant in place paying $1,200 month to month. So she's gonna have to feed the property $100 a month just as negative cash flow until she can increase rents, which she can afford to do, working a small part-time job. So the value is really in the mortgage being paid down by $1,000 a month with no interest.
Did you help her on the down payment or?
Nope. So she's worked at Chick-fil-A and Target. She saved like $14,600.
She's going all in.
So she has 600 to spare. But anyways, I thought it was kind of a neat opportunity for a young investor who says, I don't have the 20% down. And it just shows you there's opportunity in this market.
Yeah.
And so we drove by the property a couple Saturdays ago. It's beautiful ground, super well kept. And I think there'll be value in it for someone like that. So that's a little bit about one of the current deals. And we just ran a chart here. So in 5 years, the mortgage will go from 150 to 90. If you assume the market in Phoenix keeps going up by 6%, which it has for a long time, and I think it will continue to do that, that means the home would be worth 220 in 5 years. So if you owe 220, it's worth 90. You've basically taken 14,000, and in 5 years, it's worth 130,000. So that's approximately how I see these numbers playing out within a 5-year period of time. So, questions?
What are the risks of the seller finance?
To the seller or to us as the buyer?
Both.
Oh.
Why wouldn't a homeowner want to do seller financing with you?
Why would they not?
They want to cash out their money and get completely out of the deal.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times one of the main reason.
Yeah, if they want all their equity versus the monthly payout, they would rather just sell it on the market rather than taking payments over time.
Just so like if there is a deal that I come across and I'm like, hey, would you do seller financing? Just so I know, why wouldn't somebody want to do it? Just so I can objection wise.
Yeah, they want to take their money out. They could be concerned with your ability to make the payment because they're still responsible if they have a loan to make the payment, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they paid it off, then that's a different story. But a lot of times they're ready to move on and they don't want to have like a 5-year commitment with somebody, or 10-year or 20, however long you structure it. But there are a lot of people that prefer this kicking the can down as far as paying taxes on the property.
Mm-hmm. And I believe, I need to verify this, but what I've heard is that when a seller sells through seller finance, they don't pay capital gains on the sales price of 160. They only pay capital gains on what they receive each year as a payout. Mm-hmm. So it defers their tax expense down the road rather than having it being all taxed in the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the biggest risk would be we default as the buyer, they'd have to then take the property back. Mm-hmm. But one thing with this, there's a lot of companies that will service the loan. So this one's being serviced through Pioneer Title, and for $300 they'll service it. So they'll collect the escrows for taxes, insurance. They'll give you your tax forms at the end of the year. They'll give the seller their tax forms as well. So you have that independent third party acting as the mortgage company to collect the payments and then disperse them to the seller.
Yeah, and if there's an HOA or taxes or anything like that, they'll just do it as opposed to, both parties working to make sure that's done.
Yep.
Yeah. I was a property manager for mobile home communities for a number of years, and then mobile homes, manufactured homes were necessarily considered investment property.
Yeah.
So what do you see as some of the downsides to typically using mobile or manufactured homes as investment property?
I would say the shelf life isn't there always. So you don't get your 70, 80, 100 years out of a manufactured home. I think a lot of times between 30 and 50 years, they need a
rated
pretty
for that
substantial
typically.
Well, it depends on the year, obviously the built year. Anything before 79, in the 70s typically is just the
Not gonna
rates
last
are very
very long.
different, yeah.
Yeah. I liked this one because it was an 03 build, and the AC was 6 years old, so I thought there's going to be limited collateral damage if something does go wrong, just because of the years that it was built.
Would you do an inspection on that?
No,
Okay,
we haven't
inspection.
actually seen it. We've driven by the community, but they wouldn't let us in there because it actually is a 55 plus community.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Someday you'll be 55.
yeah. So, and
55 plus community, so you could purchase a home not being 55 plus, the resident first be 55 plus?
yeah, typically, like if it's Sun City or one of those other places, they'll just consider one of the occupants has to be 55 plus, and then usually there's no kids under 18. Those are the 2 requirements.
When I was a property manager, it was one had to be 55, the other had to be at least 40.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know if that's I think it was.
It depends on the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good questions.
All right. So
Any
let's hear
others?
Your next deal.
Oh, we're not going back and forth?
Well, we want to hit all of them if we can.
Okay, good.
Some more questions.
I feel like I'm doing all the
John's
talking.
keeping us on
Yeah.
track.
Is that manufactured home financeable conventionally or FHA right now in the
No.
current status? Okay.
No, it'll have to go through a portfolio bank.
Right, that would be one of the reasons why a seller would want to finance it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 5 years, she'll have to finance that through.
She'll have to go, yeah, and it won't be conventionally financed.
Okay.
But the thought process is you got a 5-year track record and you've got a low loan to value, so she'll be able to get some kind of financing on that. Yeah.
It's a great first one to think through. Not everyone would think through a mobile home as their first property, but
Yeah.
great. That's a great opportunity for your daughter.
Yeah, I think so. So we shall see. And then I actually ran into a problem with title because they said, well, I need to be a conservative, or I have to have conservatorship for her because she's allowed on title, but she's not legally allowed to sign a document until she's 18. So I reached out to my real estate attorney. He said that's true. You don't want to go through the courts and the judge and probate to get conservatorship. It's going to be costly and expensive. So I said, well, I'll buy it and take title in my name. And then the day after closing, I can sign a warranty deed bringing her on title because she doesn't have to sign that. You can add some of the title, it's just me. So that way I'll bring her on title the next day as the owner without having to have her sign documents. So there's almost always a way around problems when they come up because it seems like on every deal you're going to run into problems.
That's the fun thing about real estate. You just have to look at it different, and a lot of times you can find a good solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ready for the
Next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a property that I bought in December. And this was the same thing. I was out hunting, I got a text message, and I thought this is going to be a good one. So I told them I would buy it. And this one I thought it would be valuable to buy because of the equity. I felt like it was a below market property.
Where's that at roughly?
So this is on Scottsdale Road in like Greyhawk,
Okay.
just north of the 101. And so I found this because there's 2 zip codes I watch, 85255, 85254, and I know pretty well what homes are worth in those 2 zip codes. And that's what I would encourage investors to do is choose 2 zip codes, get to know them really well. That way you can underwrite a deal in about 30 seconds if there's going to be any meat left on the bone or not. And if there is...
Why did you choose those 2 zip codes?
It's probably some of his influence. Because Carson has always said, you know, a lot of his things are in Scottsdale. And I've got a few other rentals in Scottsdale, and it just seems like the tenants are good. They pay early. They keep the property up. It's just like it's a low headache place to invest if you can make the numbers work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I think a lot of economic support in Scottsdale, maybe a little bit more than some of the other cities in the valley.
Appreciation.
Right. Yeah, appreciation.
Does anyone know what the appreciation for the last 10 years has been in Scottsdale? Anyone have a guess?
Oh, in Scottsdale.
A year. What is it a year?
Oh, you're.
So 24?
Oh,
man.
10.
You're pretty dang close.
6.
It's 9.28% for the last 10 years.
In Scottsdale.
In Scottsdale. It's one of the top 10% areas for appreciation.
Nice. In the country or the
Yeah,
state?
in the country.
It's a country, wow. Yeah, I believe it. So this, when you look at zip codes, what I would encourage you to do is if you can go to Zillow or the MLS, just always set up a search. So every day you're getting all the homes in those zip codes sent to you. So you know like exactly to the penny what they should be selling for. And I knew that in 85255, the cheapest listing was like 575 at the time.
Yeah, that seems really cheap.
Yeah. And so this came across at 480. And so I'm like, I don't have to see the property because you just know 480 is a good number no matter what's wrong with the property. And this happened to be the one that was listed at 575. So something must have happened with the seller and a wholesaler jumped in and said, you know, I'll buy it today. So he bought it for 467. He cleared 13.5 and then sold it to me at 480. So that was the acquisition. That's how I received it. And I can send out the name of the wholesaler. His name's Alex Levya, Levya. And he comes across probably like 4 or 5 deals a day that he's sending out. So if you want to look him up or get on his list, you can do that. So this is what the property looked like when we bought it. That must be an after picture. So we just did a basic remodel with flooring, cabinetry. Gotta keep going. Do you have a couple more photos or? Oh, I see. You had the prices up there. Okay. Oh, nice. So you actually broke it down. Okay, go to the next one. Let me see here. Oh. So, okay, keep going to so that's just the kitchen. I mean, that's the bathrooms. Okay, so 675. So yeah, here's the current value. So yesterday I just ran, these are like the 3 properties that are close by. So you've got a 700, 658, 650 is current value. And then do you have something with the total cost, John? Did you put the invoice up there?
I don't have the invoice, but I do have, yeah, it's 57.
Okay. So, yeah, so that's 1 decimal or 1 comma off, but 57 was the total remodel cost. So that was with flooring, kitchen, and bathrooms. And so 57.
So it's 537. So it's.
Oh, I see.
Purchase price 57,000.
57,000 right now.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so into it for 57. So I'm into it for 537. And then the value is 675. So I felt on this one the equity that you could get through buying it as a long-term rental was there. And so that's the reason I bought it. It doesn't cash flow. I rented it out at $3,100 a month. And a mortgage payment on it would be about $3,300 a month. So I know I'm taking a loss on the cash flow, but I felt like the equity was worth it. And then the other thing I did was called the cost segregation study. And I'll touch like just for a few seconds on what that is. But with Trump's jobs and tax cut law that was put out in 2016, real estate investors can do a cost segregation study on a property. And they cost about $2,500 for a single family home. And there's a valuator that goes into the property and he evaluates every aspect of the property, the paint, the carpet, the roof. And he will figure out different depreciation cycles for it. So it either goes into a 5-year cycle, a 15-year cycle, or a 27.5-year cycle. And he'll send you a report. And what that allows you to do is when you file your taxes is you can take all of the 5-year and the 15-year depreciation in the first year. Generally speaking, the 5 and the 15-year depreciation will be about 30% of the value of the home. And so in this case, John can send out, I sent him a copy of the cost segregation study. If any of you want it, I'm happy to share it so you can read through it and see what it looks like. But it gave me a $133,000 tax write-off on that property last year for the depreciation. And so that property saved me $49,000 in federal taxes just by doing that one study on it after I owned it. And so that's where I perceived the value to be was in the equity and in the cost segregation study. And so,
When did you purchase? When was the house purchased?
December
December.
of 2022, yep.
When did he rent it?
February or early March, something like that.
Back together pretty quick.
Yeah,
Is the study done after you did the renovation or before?
after.
Does it matter?
Yes.
Okay.
They look at what you spent in that tax year.
Okay.
Yes. And that is being phased out, just so you know. So this year it's at 80%, next year 60. So in 2027, the cost segregation is going to be phased out since it was just something that Trump put into place. But it's a tactic that all real estate investors do, more so on the commercial side.
So can it be like a my rental? Because that was like the house that we currently renting right now. Could we fixed it up and then we're renting it now?
Yeah, so you have to be considered what's called a real estate professional in the IRS eyes in order to take it in the first year. It doesn't count against your W-2 income if you work at some other unrelated field. But because you're a real estate professional, it would likely be something that you could take, yes.
Should talk to the cost segregation company. They can verify it. If it's
Yeah.
worth it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and keep in mind, it's not as though that is just my money. The IRS tracks it. So then when I sell the property, I either have to pay that money back because it was depreciation that I took, or I have to do a 1031 exchange into another asset. So you still pay the piper down the road, but you typically try to do that when you're in a lower tax bracket.
So did you take out a hard money loan to do the renovation? Once you bought it at 40, what was your next couple of steps after that?
Yeah. So for an investor purchasing this, the best thing to do is figure out what the final value is. So if that's 675, you would back that out by 75% because that's what your final loan's going to be. So, which is like 530 roughly. So you would get a hard money loan for about 530, and what the hard money lender would do would give you money to purchase the property, and then they would hold back the renovation funds. And then as the renovation is done, they would pay you back for that work. So then you're left with the 530 loan. You refinance it based on 675, and therefore you don't need a down payment or a small down payment because you've built the equity into the property.
How long do you plan to hold the property?
They're all long term, so I don't really have plans to sell them, especially now, knowing that you sell it, you pay the gain back. So it's
you'll
kind of a
exchange it
lifelong
into
asset.
something if you decide to get out of it.
Yeah, you pretty much have to just say it's a lifelong asset. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question, Mayor. So we're already starting. I mean, we've already got our first rental.
Yeah.
And then one morning I woke up thinking, hey, the house that we're in, we could rent it for $3,000 minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum $3,000. I will leave me another $1,500 left to put into my next property. Is that kind of how this thing works? I mean,
It's exactly how it works.
because I was like, wait a minute, like, we could do this again, we could do it again, we could do it again. You
Yeah.
know, my fear is, I guess my conservative fear is like, we're gonna have all these mortgages, what happens if we don't have a renter? Like how far thin do we spread ourselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to decide that. I mean, we've went over the numbers in our classes here, but I think Myron and I are both in agreement, and you could look at the numbers that Phoenix Metro
Yeah.
is at a shortage of properties for the next foreseeable future. So even if the market changes anytime soon, we're still at a shortage of properties. So
Yeah.
even if they're in good areas, like you're going to be the first one to rent it out.
No doubt. And the way the math works is if you have two properties, one's vacant, you're at 50% occupancy. You're bleeding because you're not going to make cash flow. If you have 10 properties, one's vacant, you're at 90%. You're still going to make cash flow. So
that's the difference. Like you have one property and you're 3 months vacant, that's a big deal. You have 1 out of 10, that's not that big a deal, right? because after time they start cash flowing, so
Mhm.
it's not as big a deal if one's a little bit less or one's, you know, at a loss for the first year or so, because, you know, you compile all of them.
Yeah.
It gets better.
It gets better, yeah. I mean, I was just amazed, like, wait a minute, like, we could do this again.
Yeah.
It's like, dang.
Yes.
You do want to keep some money on the side, so if something does happen, that
Yeah.
you're not in a big, huge problem.
I would say if you keep 3 to 6 months of operating costs for that property, that's about sufficient to give you peace of mind.
Yep.
So this one's yours, Carson.
So this one's a little bit different. This is one that's on the MLS. At first glance, I don't know what you guys would think. Would you guys buy a house where the first 3 years you're paying negative cash flow? So you're paying extra money into it. The first year you're paying $500 minimum. Second year you're paying $300, and third year it's about $100 before it actually starts cash flowing. Would anyone do that?
Yes.
All right.
There's got to be another no out there. If only one person says yes.
God's in there.
Really? No. Guess it depends what your current financial situation is.
It's like, now the money to pay the extra.
And it depends on like how it looks, because not everyone. We'll see how it turns out.
From
So
the outside, it looks.
I looked when we started looking at this. I was thinking I want to look at some properties in Peoria. So I started analyzing some of those, and they were all negative cash flow. I looked at what other areas? I looked at a few other areas, and they were all negative cash flow because that's most of the market right now. You're not going to find easily with interest rates and payments. There's a difference between what you could rent it for and what you could buy it for right now. So that's the problem right now. And so I looked at this one knowing, I know that Scottsdale for the last 10 years is a 9.28% interest rate per year. So I went conservative on this one, and we'll look at the numbers. This one's already done. So has newer roof, newer ACs, completely remodeled. So there's not a lot that you'd have to do. And I looked at the rent on this one. The rent, it's a 4-bedroom. It's right around 4,800 is what, there was some that were right around 5,000, some around 4,700 that were similar finished. So it looked like it was pretty fair to say 4,800 would be your rent, which, you know, it seems high, but when you have a almost $1 million property, that's why. Upfront costs, we're asking the seller. This one's been on the market for over 3 months, so we're asking for them to come up with 2% closing costs, which isn't unheard of in this market. And we would be getting a commission because we're real estate agents. I think almost everyone in here, besides a couple. So we'd be getting a commission of $66,500. They're paying out a 3% commission, so we're just going to put that towards the purchase price. All right.
So just to be clear, the 10% down minus 3% commission is the 66. So that's what you'd have to come up
It's
with.
a conventional loan. Anyone have any questions so far? Okay, let's go to the next one. Then I broke down our monthly payment at 6%, and Myron, you can tell me if I was
That's close. I mean, it's pretty
close
close.
or
Yeah.
not. But I did the mortgage at 6% is right around $5,126. You have taxes, and that's what the taxes said online. Insurance, it's right around $125 a month. Pool service, $125 a month. So you're right around $5,500 a month. So you saw that those numbers go the other way, right? So let's keep going a little bit further. Has a nice pool in the backyard. So if we look at 6% appreciation, at the end of year one, the property is going to be worth $1 million. And at the end of year 10, it's going to be worth 1.7 million if things keep appreciating for 6%, which is probably likely that it's gonna fall somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Between 9 and, yeah, so it'll be pretty dang close to that, I would say. Rental appreciation on this, we did 4%. It's been higher than that over the last 10 years, but we went conservative and did it at 4%. So it shows on here, your first year one, you're gonna be paying in an extra $500 every single month. So you better have some money saved up or have a good job that's producing for you. Year two, that's about $300 and some dollars, and then year three, it's a little less than $100 a month.
Nice.
And at the year 10, the property has went up in rent, and you're bringing in about 20 grand a year in rent.
I think what he's showing here is such a key metric, and that's why real estate is the best asset class out there, is the day you buy it is when your costs are fixed. And I always think if you take 30 years off of any date, if you bought a house 30 years ago, that's still your payment today. That's what your parents' payment is today, but yet everything else goes up around it. And so to your point, Yvette, the longer you have it, the more you have, the bigger your spread will become.
And the other thing we're not even considering is like, it would be very likely the next year that interest rates go down. Would you say, Myron?
Yeah, it's
So
likely.
there's a pretty good shot, but
Yeah.
if they don't, you're locked in at 6%. If it goes down to 5, you refinance and
Right.
you're at a whole different
Ballgame.
monthly payment.
Yeah.
So these numbers will change in your favor if that happens.
Yep.
But this is where we're at right now, so we're going with that.
Call him conservative Carson.
So here's the question: is it worth it? At first glance, it doesn't look like it's worth it, right? Would everyone agree? Like for 3 years, you're throwing money into the basket. So the balance of the loan in 2043 is roughly 713,000. So you paid down quite a bit, and you have a balance of 141,000. That's now equity. And then after 6 years of appreciation, that's 751,000. You have your 4% of rent appreciation after 10 years. That's an extra 60,000. And then you have 10 years of total profit when you add all those things up compared to what you actually have into the property with your rental commission and everything.
Yeah.
That's a 1,114% return on your money that you originally put into it.
Is that good?
I don't know. It depends who you're asking, right?
Hey, I was the one who shot up and said, yeah, I'll take that deal.
But that's the power of investing. Over time, these things change your whole financial picture. And I think some other things to even consider on this that we didn't even talk about is depreciation. You could depreciate this. Does anyone know what residential real estate depreciates at? Typically, if you don't do the cost study.
No.
This is Real Estate School 101.
No.
Anyone know?
I need to go back.
27.5. Yeah, so you could depreciate this.
27.5?
Yeah, you can depreciate this over 27.5 years. So, if you do the cost study, it pushes it way faster than that. So that's another advantage that we didn't talk about here. Mortgage insurance, your mortgage insurance every single month is tax deductible. So you're not paying taxes on that. You deduct your property taxes. That's another thing. When you pay that, I think it was $125 a month. That's deductible. You could refinance the property. We didn't go too into that, but it's likely that within a year, you're going to be able to refinance that. You can exchange the property at a different time. You find something that's a better investment. You can move into like a $3 million house if you find one that makes sense, or a commercial property, something like that. If you're young, I know Taylor just got married, so this might not work for him, but you could house hack. You could have 4 roommates in this house, and I mean,
She wouldn't approve.
Yeah, she might not approve, but if you could definitely do that, or you could even get a few more and split that monthly cost between 4 people. This is great retirement money. 10 years from now, who would like to retire and have, what's that, close to $1 million in your pocket?
Yeah.
And then also have that cash flow too. And then, yeah, just put it into another investment.
I think why it's so key to pick up on the stuff that Carson's saying is that it somewhat goes against what you're going to find on Google and YouTube. So if you just say, I want to get into investing, you're going to find turnkey investors in Wichita, Kansas saying, hey, we'll get you $300 a month in cash flow. That's fine, but everyone seems to be drawn to cash flow as like the number one thing. Hey, I want to build up my cash flow so I can then retire. A lot of the properties that cash flow aren't going to give you the wealth that you might be looking for. And so when you look at an example like this, the wealth is built through the appreciation.
I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, so maybe I look at this different. My parents lived in a house for like 15 plus years, and what they bought it for and what they sold it for was pretty dang close. So, I mean, that's the power. I mean, those properties cash flow better, but yeah, you don't get the appreciation like we're looking at here. There's no way.
Yeah. And it's important to think of real estate as what the value of the asset is. So if you have a stock account that has 200,000 in it, you have one that has $1 million in it, and both of them earn 6%, well, obviously your $1 million is going to give you 5 times more the return. Real estate's the same way. It always appreciates based on market value, and so the more market value of real estate that you hold, the greater your return is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And if you are investing in the stock market, a good return is like 10% a year. That's a really good return. Like, there's no way, it's going to be unlikely that you're going to get over 1,000% return over 10 years.
Yeah.
If you know, generally spread out between multiple stocks in the stock market.
Yeah.
And this is just one that I know the area, so I just threw it up here and like, let's look at what this could be, you know.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to buy that property, it's
Yeah, it's actively for sale right now. So.
It's listed at 950.
It's $975, but it's been on there for a while. So
Do you think the dolphins in the pool are a plus or minus?
depends if you have kids, right?
Sounds like 975 for 3 months in the market. That sounds like 850 to me.
Yeah, it does me too.
Just a starting point.
Yeah, I mean, we aren't conservative. You might be able to get it less. Go try to attack it. It's on the market now. So this is one you guys could take down if you want. It's like blocks from this office. So.
Nice.
Any questions on that?
Could that be rented as a short-term rental?
Yeah, it's not an
Is it
HOA, so yeah, that could change the cash flow too.
Yeah.
I think they originally built it for potential
Might have to
Airbnb.
send that over to somebody.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Carson.
Yeah.
Nice.
Any questions that you guys have?
I would say when you look at something like this too, you might be thinking, well, I can't do that for this, this, and this. Maybe you don't have the income to qualify. Maybe you don't have the down payment. Maybe you feel like you don't have the experience. All those things are easily things that you could solve, either through bringing investors in, raising money, getting more experience. So I would just say, whatever you perceive to be your holdbacks, I think those are all probably overcomable the more that you learn and the more connected you are and the more that you really have a desire to acquire property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on this one, the 10% down was $95,000. So that seems like a lot, but then you get a real estate commission if you're licensed, and that brings it down to $66,000, right? And then you just figure out how you make that work. It seems like a lot for, I'm sure, a lot of you guys, but.
Yeah. That's good.
Do we have any questions? Anyone online? Derek?
Very informative, thank you.
Well, we appreciate you guys attending, and we'll let you know in the next one. The next one that we have coming up is, what is it, May 11th, John?
Yep.
May 11th at 10 a.m. So mark it on your calendar if you want to attend. And that one's buying your first rental property. So we'll probably dive into a few more properties if you guys feel like that was helpful. And then we have our May 4th party. It's May the 4th at, is it 4 p.m.? I never asked Myron yet, but we're gonna ask Myron if he could come and help with the market stats, and then we're gonna do headshots and have a fiesta. So
Nice.
Not bad.
have some tequila margaritas John will be making. So yeah, join us.
Nice. Thanks.
It might be chicken fajita day.
I've been hearing this
You
for a
don't
long time.
say. No, don't make promises.